Let's talk to Benedict Spence, political commentator this morning. Benedict, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Very well, but very angry, actually, because, you know, we've all probably seen this coming. We could have all predicted that something like this would happen. In some ways, I'm surprised it hasn't happened sooner, because the narrative that we have been told to believe and to listen to is that, you know, Israel is a terrible state committing genocide. We're going to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he ever sets foot on British Isles, British shores. We're going to take all sorts of, you know, actions against Israel. We're going to stop exporting arms to them, you know, and we're going to recognise the state of Palestine. Is it any wonder, therefore, that these scumbag Islamist extremists think it's okay to go around killing Jewish people?
It's no surprise at all. I mean, it must be said the security services in this country foil a significant number of these sorts of plots and these sorts of individuals on a worryingly frequent basis.
Yeah.
On the one hand, we can be grateful for that. On the other, the very fact that we're having to say that they are doing it on a fairly regular basis, people in this country, is deeply alarming and deeply disturbing. And the other word, of course, is disgust. It is disgusting now to think that we live in a country where Jewish people not just face the possibility of violence for who they are, but now have been murdered for who they are. And it is equally disgusting, as you say, that there is a subset of thousands of people in this country whose default response to those murders is to come out and celebrate and support a movement that specifically sets out for the murder of Jewish people, again, for who they are. And you have to sort of look at this across the entirety of not even just the start of the war between Israel and Hamas. It's been going on for so much longer than that, but certainly, you know, that big telltale moment was on October 7th, when on the evening of October 7th, London was once again filled with people chanting about how Israel was an apartheid state, a genocidal state. Israel was the aggressor, even as almost 1,200 people were, you know, dead or dying in Israel at that very moment.
Yeah.
That was what mattered to these people. We've had the most major music festival in this country at Glastonbury, hosting people celebrating and calling for the death of Jews, of members of the IDF, and, you know, everything that sort of accompanied that. These protests through London on a regular basis, where overtly anti-Semitic genocidal chants have been heard regularly for years now. And actually, it's still been sort of allowed to carry on. Not only that, this movement has been rewarded with the state of Palestine being recognized by the British government. I mean, I'm just not sure how it is that we're supposed to be showing these people that we are not tolerant at all of their viciousness, of their bigotry, given that, as you say, the policing is mild and they get a state out of it at the end.
And as somebody's asked me today, Cliff on Twitter has said, you know, who's organising these demonstrations? Somebody must know who's organising them. There must be, you know, permission sought by some of these people. I mean, they're in Liverpool Street Station there that we can see. They were outside Downing Street last night. They were up in Manchester as well. I mean, presumably they're liaising with the police to say we're going to be doing this. And so somebody must know who's there, who's organising it, and who therefore can be told, I'm sorry, you can't do it tonight.
They must do, but at the same time, we have to then ask, why is it that the police aren't stepping in? Now, there are lots of laws in this country around things like freedom of assembly, which are meant to protect all of our civil liberties and right to free speech and to protest. But it must be said, I think, you know, at some point we have to recognize that these particular protests, that this movement utilizes and preys upon our tolerance and our goodwill to spread something that is, you know, I'm not one for going big on what are British values. We're constantly told what we're supposed to think of British values by the Prime Minister and by the Labour Party. We have that rammed down our throats. But I would have thought just one underlying principle that should apply for British people and for every post-Holocaust European country, as an extension, is that it's a really good measure of how civilized you are, how you treat your Jews, just as a basic principle. It's unrelated to how maybe you live the rest of your life, but as a basic idea, how your Jews feel in your country, whether or not they have to have security at their schools, at their synagogues, whether or not they have to look over their shoulders as they go out to their places of work is a fairly good barometer as to whether or not you are civilized. And I think now we obviously fail that test.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Let me show you this. I don't know if you've seen this clip of Shabana Mahmood yesterday. She went up to Manchester to do a sort of joint press conference with Andy Burnham. And she couldn't help herself to do what all great left-wingers do, which is to more or less come out and say, you know, we know this is a terrible thing, but don't make it worse by saying anything about it. Check this out.
The government has stepped up security at synagogues across the whole of the country, and we will do whatever is required to keep our Jewish community safe. I know that there are many questions that are still to be answered, and rest assured they will be answered as quickly as possible. What I do want to say is to those who seek to divide us, they will fail.
I mean, why even say that? She said hardly any sentences at all. One of the sentences said, the people who choose to divide us will fail. You know, how about the person who chooses to divide us is the guy at the other end of the knife who's been stabbing people to death?
I mean, especially coming after we've had weeks of people simply being, you know, being called racists and divisives and bigots for the crime of simply displaying the English flag or the Union flag in some cases. Those people are called divisive. Those people are called bigots for simply wishing to say that this is their country and they're proud of it. But as we saw all of last night, if you rock up with a keffiyeh covering your face and a Palestinian flag, well, that's fine. That's not divisive at all. That's just, you know, demonstrating your God-given right to free speech.
Yeah.
As you say, the people who are dividing us are the ones seeking out members of the British public on the basis of aspects of their personality, of their trait, of their background that they cannot help. The fact that they are born Jewish. Those are the divisive people. Those are the ones shouting things about how Zionists are not welcome in certain towns and cities in London. Those are the people who are divisive. And actually, I personally think most members of the British public have no problem with being called divisive if what their view of divisiveness is saying, we will not tolerate those people in our society. This simply was not a thing 10, 20 years ago. You simply did not have this level of vitriol towards Jewish people. It is a relatively recent phenomenon, and you can't get away from the fact that a lot of it is being driven by ethnic minority communities, that is to say, inherently immigrant communities who have come into this country, have brought this bigotry with them, and are repaying our charitableness, our hospitality with hostility to a community of people that has been here for centuries, that has assimilated, that is part of the fabric of British life, and we should not tolerate that. And if that makes us divisive, well, that's fine with me.
Exactly right. And let's not forget, and I mentioned this earlier when Charlie Rowley was here, you know, Keir Starmer made a big thing last week of saying, you know, the reason why we hate what Nigel Farage wants to do to this country is that he wants to go into our communities and deport people who have been living here for years, who have created lives here, who have done things here for a long time, who may have come from other countries. Well, this guy, Jihad al-Shami, came here as a child. And he was given British citizenship as a teenager. He's now 35 years old, and he's decided to reward us for all of the great years that he's had in this country by going around stabbing innocent British people who happen to be Jewish because he doesn't like Jews.
Well, this is a thing, as you say. You know, if people can say, well, we don't want Nigel Farage going into our communities, deporting members of our communities who have been here a very long time. Well, let me one-up that. I don't want these people going into our communities and murdering members of our communities whose ancestors have been here significantly longer than these people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there have to be consequences for this sort of thing. It also cannot be the case. I think we have to be very clear about this. It cannot be the case that individuals like this commit these crimes and we're allowed to be told, oh, it's just in a bubble. It's happened in a vacuum. It's just a one-off. It's a lone wolf. It has nothing to do with anybody else. No. Somebody else in this community, many other people I suspect, at his mosque, at his school, in his family, will have known about this sort of thing, will have known about this radicalization, because these people are not quiet about their beliefs.
No.
They're very vocal about them. And I think there have to be questions, therefore, for the broader community. And I have, again, no qualms at all with deporting people who are like this, deporting people who know that people in their family or their workplace are like this and say nothing. Those people, frankly, because they are leading to this sort of violence and this intolerance, they are not British. They have no role in British. And we would say the same if it was a white nationalist. We'd say, lock that person up.
Yeah.
The With these people, we have the ability to deport them if they're not British citizens.
If some white nationalists came here from South Africa, they'd be deported before you could say, Henry Blofeld, they would literally be straight out the door, But this business, we got Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, referring to this guy as a vile individual, as if he was working on his own. They've already arrested 3 other people who were clearly accomplices in what he was doing.
Well, there you go. It's just, but we will hear this, of course, won't we? Lone wolf is often the phrase, or mental health, disturbed, that sort of thing, radicalized very recently. I'm sorry, this stuff does not just happen overnight. People do not just flip and start murdering Jews overnight. It is something that is deeply ingrained. Very often. It's a process of radicalization that goes on over years, and there is very often a network of people attached to it. We see this, frankly, reflected in the way that radical Islam spreads in our prison systems. It's always through the same networks that go out to look for vulnerable people to radicalize, often the most violent people it seeks out specifically for this reason. I don't want to hear any kind of pandering or sense of, we won't let this divide us. These people are the ones dividing us, and everybody who is closing ranks around their community and ignoring that there is a problem are as equally divisive as these people.
Yeah, absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. But Benedict, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Common sense coming from Benedict Spence there, political commentator, about these people, as he calls them, who are radicalised in this country, who hate Jewish people so much so that they would kill them, and who hate us so much so that they would kill us as well, who are not Jewish, but simply not Islamic either. That is the problem. Breaking news, by the way, the Home Secretary, who will not come on this show, Shabana Mahmood, has said this: "I'm very disappointed that some of the organisers haven't heeded the call to step back." She's talking about the protests last night. She said, "I urge them to step back for at least a few days." A few days? How about you ban them from marching around, creating Jew hatred and chanting from the river to the sea, and talking about the eradication of the State of Israel? How about you do that? Do your job and stop pandering to this lunatic, Islamic, crazed death cult. It's time, honestly.